Nitro Rad.
There seems to be three types of RPG Maker horror games. First, there's the Yume Nikki fan games, where you'll explore some sort of secondary world and search for a great number of things, games like .flow, Yume Tuki, and Answer Prayers. Then there's the ones that are actually RPGs, and they tell a bizarre, surreal story as you fight your way through each area, games like Space Funeral and Off. Lastly, there's the ones that don't have any sort of battle system and simply tell a story as you navigate and solve puzzles in the world around you. Games like Mogeko Castle, Ebe, The Crooked Man, and of course, the game we'll be talking about today, Mad Father. Mad Father was created in Wolf RPG Editor by a Japanese user named Sen. It seems that most of these RPG Maker horror games are designed by the Japanese. Hell, the only one I've talked about that isn't Japanese so far has been Space Funeral. Mad Father was released in 2012, and the latest version, as of this video, is 1.09. One alarming thing that's often overlooked are the restrictions on sharing the game that the author has put out. Upon starting the game, it even states that streaming live gameplay is absolutely forbidden, and on the developer's site it says that he prohibits sharing the text, images, and data in the game. Despite this, many people have still streamed the game, and there's countless YouTube videos, some from extremely popular YouTubers, of people playing the game. It's bizarre that the developer would put out this rule, and it's a little disheartening to see it totally ignored. In all honesty, I was reluctant in considering even making this video about the game, but it's something I really wanted to share, and I haven't heard of any penalties ever being enforced, so I decided to go through and make the video. Not because I intend to disrespect the developer, but because their work is absolutely something worth sharing. Anyway, now that that's out of the way, why don't we take a look at the horror adventure game that is none other than Mad Father. The title screen is very well done, featuring a silhouette of the main character as a beautiful piano piece is played. The game starts with a long introduction credit sequence, which is a rarity in the case of RPG Maker games, considering that they're often made by a single person. We're soon introduced to the main character, Aya Drevis, a 10-year-old little girl living in a mansion with her father, Alfred Drevis. We come in to see her attempting to enter her father's laboratory, with her father soon after telling her to go back to bed. It's made pretty clear that Alfred is doing a lot of unethical things in his lab, but Aya actually knows all about it. She explains that while she doesn't know his exact intentions, he is indeed performing a number of very inhumane experiments in that room, possibly even killing innocent people for the sake of it. She keeps quiet about it because she truly believes that her father is a good person, which is demonstrated through a number of flashbacks that strengthens the character development between Aya and her family. We see various acts of kindness demonstrated by Alfred to both Aya and her mother. Aya's mother, Monica, died a long time ago, and Aya remains very loyal to her as she hangs on to a number of keepsakes that belong to her, such as a bottle of her perfume. It soon becomes apparent that Alfred was cheating on Monica with his assistant, Maria. Maria tells Alfred that Aya is aware of their relationship, but Alfred assures her that it doesn't matter and tells her to always be kind to Aya since she's his daughter and the most beloved thing to him in the world. The dialogue really makes the character development come through. It's easy to understand Aya's plight, how she knows about the awful things he does, because we get to experience firsthand that despite these things he does, he truly does seem like a good person. We're not told exactly how Aya's mother died before we finally take control of Aya. The clock strikes midnight and Aya is in her bed. Unable to sleep, she decides to get up and walk around. Being an RPG Maker game, Mad Father controls exactly as you'd expect. You walk around with the arrow keys and interact with objects using the Z key. You're also able to open up a menu with the X key. The control setup is identical to any other RPG Maker game, so I don't even know why I bothered explaining it. You're able to trigger flashbacks by interacting with certain objects. We get to see the first one by interacting with the doll in Aya's room. Exploration is key, as looking at certain objects will give you certain details of the story, so it's recommended that you take a look at everything that seems important. In Aya's room, you're also able to find the first of 21 gems. These are collectibles scattered throughout the game, hidden in certain objects and rooms. Collecting all 21 will reveal a bonus scene after the game's credits, so if you're interested in that, let the hunt begin. Many of the RPG Maker games I've played don't exactly have this sort of thing. Extra scenes are usually unlocked with simple dialogue choices or by accessing all the endings, so it's a really nice addition to have something extra to look for as you play the game. Aya goes back to bed to try and get some sleep, but is awakened by the screams of her father. Knowing something must have gone wrong, she decides to go back down to the lab in order to help him. To Aya's surprise, the mansion is now haunted by her father's various experiments. A couple of zombies approach Aya, causing her to flee back into her room. Here you'll meet a character named Ogre who appears to be a businessman with an unknown origin. He's an odd character who shows up every now and then offering Aya some vague advice. If I had to make a comparison, I guess I'd say he's kind of like G-Man from Half-Life, how he just shows up every now and then, and how he's a very mysterious character that we never really get to know that much about. Ogre also appears in Sen's other game, Misao. We'll talk about that one another time. Much of the gameplay in Mad Father consists of solving puzzles in order to advance. There's a great variety of these, ranging from manipulating your surroundings to find an item, to interpreting information. Sometimes they even involve both. Soon enough, you'll obtain a small chainsaw that you're able to use to break various objects, whether it be barrels in the way of a secret passage or door, or a mannequin you need to destroy in order to solve a puzzle. It adds a layer of what you have to work with, making the puzzles a little bit more complex. The puzzles in this game are surprisingly well made. They're challenging enough to be very fun, but never too hard to make you feel stumped. They're also just frequent enough to make the game's pacing pretty smooth. You'll save your progress by interacting with crows, which you'll find pretty much everywhere, in almost every room, actually. This is good considering that you want to save very often because you don't know whether or not something in the next room might get you a game over. Saving the game requires almost no time flat, so you'll never grow frustrated waiting for the game to save over and over. It's very quick. As you explore the mansion, you'll run into a number of guinea pigs involved with Alfred's experiments that are able to harm Aya. For the first time I think I've ever seen in an RPG Maker game, you have a health meter. Bumping into an enemy will drain the meter. Take too much damage, and it's game over. Running from enemies never seems to be an issue thanks to the fast pace at which Aya moves, and the ability to move diagonally, which is, again, something I don't often see in RPG Maker games. Some of the enemies will give you a game over in one hit, and will require solving a puzzle or sneaking past in order to advance. The puzzles involving these instant death enemies can often be frustrating and result in a lot of trial and error, especially this part of the game, which involves luring the enemy into a jail cell and quickly shutting it. You have to know exactly what to do because you're only given barely enough time to do it all. This is something I'm really not a fan of. Like I just mentioned, some enemies require sneaking past, as Mad Father sports several stealth segments. This will involve staying out of the enemy's line of sight as they walk around looking for you. These segments aren't as frustrating, but they will still require a level of trial and error. It's honestly a little staggering to see an RPG Maker horror game that's story-driven to have this much gameplay. Usually you just go from room to room just looking at objects just to take in the story, but Mad Father definitely kicks it up a notch, and in that regard, it definitely stands out. In regards to horror level, Mad Father isn't really scary at all. It's not even creepy, really. There's a number of messed up themes and awful things that the characters do, but the game just lacks the atmosphere and graphics needed to make me feel scared. Maybe it's because I have such a high tolerance to fear after being a Silent Hill fan for so long, but still, games like .Flow managed to creep me out with the extremely creepy atmosphere and visuals that game has, so I don't know. The presentation overall, though, is top-notch. The sprites are incredibly well crafted, and the character art isn't half bad either. I still prefer Mogeko Castle's art style as far as the character art goes, but Mad Father's sprite and background quality are easily the better of the two games. The music is wonderful, and it fits the game like a glove. Except this one track that's supposed to play during intense moments, but instead of building tension, it just makes a game sound like an action platformer or something. You see what I mean? It's just kinda silly and doesn't really fit that well. These parts of the game are dumb. You have to mash the Z key as fast as you can if you want to pass the event alive. I guess they did it to make an intense feel of horror, but it falls flat on its face, and instead of making me scared, it just makes me annoyed. Alright, back to the game's story. Much of the game's dialogue is only there to serve the character development, which is done well enough to give you a good idea of the character's ambitions and emotions. It did honestly grow a tad boring to me though, as the game's story is pretty slow paced. There's no real big plot turns or inciting moments until nearly the very end of the game. It's totally worth getting there though, because the plot takes a big spin and gets very interesting very quickly. You discover the reason behind Aya's mother's death and what her father is really up to doing all of these experiments. You can even see some optional backstory about his assistant, Maria. There's 3 different endings you can get, 2 of which are bad ends and 1 of which is the real ending. Getting the real ending requires seeing Maria's backstory, which you can access from the archives back near the beginning of the game. Thankfully, instead of suffering a backtracking nightmare, right before the entrance of the final scene, Ogre will allow you to warp all the way back to the beginning and then right back whenever you want. This eliminates any crap you'd normally get trying to assure the best ending, and that is just awesome. In the end, it's a charming tale about a father who loves his daughter, but has twisted ways of doing what he thinks is right. None of the characters are bad people, they just happen to do bad things. Aya loves her father despite this, which isn't necessarily a good thing. The game tackles themes of questioning whether it's right to still love someone considering what they'll do to demonstrate how they care, and the more things change, the more they stay the same. Overall, Mad Father is very good. The high production value really shows with the high quality visuals and music, and the story, while slow at first, is definitely worth experiencing just for the ending alone. The dull pace of the story is kept astray by excellent puzzles, though there are some frustrating segments sprinkled about. As a whole, I like Mogeko Castle more, but I'd still highly recommend it. The game's pretty short and will probably run you just under 3 hours. It's a great way to spend an afternoon if you're in the mood for some great puzzles and a great plot twist. Like always, I'll put the link in the description below, so if you get a chance, check it out. Hey guys, and thank you so much for watching. Did you know that I have a Facebook page? The link to it is in the description down below. Throw it a like if you want to see updates on future videos, create discussion, or screen caps of when I accidentally pause the footage on a frame where I'm making a dumb face. Also, if you want to see other videos I've done on different RPG Maker games, I just recently did one on the Yume Nikki fan game, .flow, and you can check that out by clicking the link on the left. But if you want to see something a little bit different, I also did one on a game called Space Funeral, a comedy horror adventure RPG game, and if you want to see that, click the link on the right. As always, I'd greatly appreciate if you gave the video a like if you enjoyed it, and subscribed if you haven't yet. So, have yourselves a great night, and take care. Now that that's out of the way, why don't we take a look at the horror adventure game that is none other than Von Fliff.